What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? Hopefully everyone's having a good week. I said, you know what? I had some thoughts in my head and I wrote them down. I'm like, let's fire up the old camera. Let's fire up the old laptop and record a little podcast. So I appreciate you guys watching. And I had some thoughts, and they actually revolve around the AFC North. One, in relation to Mike Tomlin. I think they kind of got a fork in the road moment this weekend. And some comments that Lamar Jackson made that I definitely wanted to, to dive into, as well as something that I've been thinking a lot about when it comes to college football. I did a little recon, started texting around, have a few thoughts that some of the scouting community definitely needs to start sniffing around, because there is a gold rush that is currently taking place, and it probably is only going to get more aggressive. So we will dive into some football, but first, before we do, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast. Here's the thing. They are slinging football tickets. So do you want to go to an NFL game? Do you want to go to a college game? Because it doesn't get any easier than using the ticketing app GameTime. Here's the thing. It is extremely easy to use. I can type in, do I want to go to Oregon, USC? Do I want to go to, Texas versus Georgia? Do I want to go to the Raiders because I'm going to Vegas to watch the Chiefs play? Whatever game you want to go to. You just tap the venue, you tap the team, and they have tickets as low as $100, so you can get them for cheap. And here's the thing with GameTime. They don't fool you. The price you see is the same price at checkout, already has the fees included. So take the guesswork out of buying professional football tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN, that's J-O-H-N, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go, baby. Download that app today. Well, let's start with Mike Tomlin. I've been thinking a lot about this after hammering them last week as a home dog, something Mike Tomlin has been famous for. Not just covering the spread when he's a home underdog, but has basically a 70% winning percentage, just winning the game outright. It's literally called the Tomlin spot. It's one of his great attributes. And before I dive into this, let me say this. I have a ton of respect for the guy. He's had a remarkable career. And I've been saying this for the last couple years. Just because you get a divorce doesn't mean there aren't going to be other girls that like you and want to marry you. Right? We saw Andy Reid get fired, immediately get another job, and turn his Chiefs tenure alone is a Hall of Fame career. So Mike Tomlin, if he ever became available, would be the number one choice for all these franchises. I'm looking at you, New York Giants. But I'm over saying they should fire Mike Tomlin. I don't believe the Pittsburgh Steelers ever plan on saying, we fired a head coach. They love saying we've had 3 guys over 75 years. Great. How many playoff games you won recently? Well, we haven't won one in a decade, but the standard is the standard. Like, we have to acknowledge it's not really working. And they put all their chips in the middle of the table, which I admire. I say it over and over again, whether it's the draft, whether it's the way you live your life, whether it's the way you invest in stocks. Any person that leans aggressive, you're going to get a thumbs up from me. I admire that mindset. But what the Steelers are doing is kind of the opposite at this point. And when you look at their schedule, it's like, listen, it's the NFL. It's hard. Like it's you go 10-7, that is impressive. But when you do it year after year after year and you're making the playoffs, and then you get to the playoffs and then you get routed, it's like, well, it kind of feels like the hamster wheel, and the only thing you're bragging on is we never lose. Well, okay, that's commendable, but you're not making any progress. Meanwhile, multiple teams in your division, right? The Ravens have rattled off playoff victories. The Bengals a couple years ago went to the Super Bowl. So you have been lapped in your own operation. Now you go, well, we're better than the Browns. Well, whip-de-doo. Like, big-time accomplishment. We have to acknowledge that if they lose this week to Indy, they're a home dog to Daniel Jones and Indy, who are as hot as any team in the NFL. where are we going with this thing? And I think for the first time, because the betting odds have been like, hey, the Ravens are still favored. The Ravens are still favored. And you start doing the math, you're like, the Ravens aren't going to win this division. All of a sudden, I'm recording this on Tuesday. You look up Wednesday night. If they beat the Dolphins, they will have 3 wins. They'll be 3-5. If the Steelers lose to the Colts on Sunday, they'd have 4 wins. And if the Bengals beat the Bears, they'd have 4 wins as well. So it's not like this thing that looked like a lock a couple weeks ago is not making any progress. You're like, well, actually, you've kind of come back to earth. And here's the biggest problem. The Steelers are going to beat some bad teams. Congratulations. When they played the Seattle Seahawks, who are a playoff team, at home earlier in the season, they lost by 2 touchdowns. When they just played the Green Bay Packers at home, who are not only a playoff team, but a team that looks like they could win the Super Bowl, they lost by double digits. Now when they're playing the Colts, if the same thing happens and the dust settles and they have lost 30-17 or 28-15, it's like you aren't even in the same ballpark as the good teams. We've seen them the last 2 years in the playoffs against the Bills and the Ravens get thoroughly embarrassed, get curb stomped, get just, yeah, you're making the playoffs, but you're not even remotely close to what we're doing. And now you look at the last 4 years of Tomlin, 9-7-1, 9-8, 10-7, 10-7. And now if I was a betting man, I'd say this team feels 9-8-ish. But you go, they have the highest pay. I saw James Harrison said something's not adding up here. Most money dedicated to defense, and the defense is atrocious. I'd even add Mike Tomlin is a defensive guy. When you watch these like hard knock clips, what room is he in? He's hanging out in the defensive meeting room. Like that's his, his baby, right? But he can go, well, hey, it's the defensive coordinator calling it. And I think there comes a point in time, and I'm not blaming this all on him. I don't know. I'm not in that building how much pull he has on the roster. Obviously, he has some. But this roster is extremely flawed. They're old on defense, 1, and 2, offensively, they clearly whiffed on the running back from Iowa. At least for this year, he's not going to help them. They're depending on Jalen Warren, who I like the guy, but he's a 2. And they got 1 wide receiver and like 7 tight ends. Like they're just not explosive enough if they get down to come back. And they're going to be down in some games, clearly, with that defense. So now you look at it and go, well, you lost Seattle, you lost to Green Bay. If you lose to Indianapolis, you still have home games remaining against the Ravens and the Bills. If you can't win any of these games, isn't it fair to ask ourselves, is it finally time? And I understand this organization, the pride they take, and never wanted to say we fired him. If you're Mike, like, why do you want to continue this? Why do you want to go along with a team that needs to be blown up more than likely? That even if you're able to get to 10 wins and get to the first round, you're going to be one and done. You have a 41-year-old quarterback, so there is no future. You got old guys, even the best player on your team is kind of hit or miss now in some of these games. Why? He's old. And you just invested $100 million into the guy. And I have nothing but respect for TJ Watt, but we just got to call a spade a spade. Like some games, he looks like Myles Garrett. Other games, he's nowhere to be found. That happens to aging players. Cam Hayward, who's in his mid to late 30s. So you look at this team, you go, there's not really much future. If you were Mike Tomlin, and obviously you're trying to win this week, but if you don't, and then all of a sudden it turns into you're fighting till the end just to win the division, and then you lose in the first weekend of the playoffs, when you go, maybe it's time for a fresh start. If I love coaching and I love this profession, like, what's the point of doing this? And if you're the Steelers, like, isn't it time for some new blood? Mike Tomlin, once upon a time, gave you that 15, 17 years ago. So I'm looking at the Steelers, who a lot's changed in a couple weeks because you're watching them play. You go, this defense is atrocious. And anytime you have an atrocious defense, you can lose to anybody, let alone the good teams. You saw the Packers have one good half, scored at will. You watch this Colts offense coming in. They are going to be so freaking excited to get to the stadium on Sunday morning. They'll take Ubers. They won't even wait for the bus. They'll be like, hey, guys, I'll see you there. I got to get there. So you look at this operation. Mike Tomlin has a legendary record as a home dog. It's like 70%. And now we see last week, same thing, not only didn't cover, lost outright. Feels like it's probably going to happen again. And then you got the Bills not far away, and obviously if you can't beat the Ravens, what's the point? Isn't it time to just nuke this thing? So if you're a fan, I would imagine there are a lot of people that over the years have wanted to defend him because he's a likable guy, and obviously his resume early on in his career was awesome. Those teams were stacked. Those teams were absolutely loaded. Now his teams are kind of average. And it feels like when he's playing better competition, they don't have a shot. And obviously, he always, and in fairness, the CEO head coach, like he's very dependent on his coordinators. But a huge part of what he brought to the table was the leadership, was the moxie, was the bravado, was leading the group of men out to battle. Well, if that no longer is a point of difference, what's the point of this? And I think you're at a point where it's just kind of running on empty. And that happens to a message, right? There's a reason, like, I can't imagine still being at my house at 40 years old, listening to my parents tell me what to do. Like at 18, 19, 20 years old, 17 years old, you go out on your own and you kind of figure it out. And I think coaching, a lot of people said it was 10 years, and the message kind of runs dry. Well, if this week gets ugly, I think it's starting to set. I think we have to acknowledge that the message is done. And he no longer has the same juice in that locker room to kind of rally the troops as he once had. And I think it would be time for a fresh start. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook now has new promos every single day. We talk a lot of football on 3 and Out, but there's always something to bet. We got the World Series, baby. Week 8 kicks off later this week as well. But if you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. If you're already betting on the Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app, you know what that means. Wednesdays are the last day to use your legendary rewards drops. Open up the app today. You could have a bonus bet, or who knows what's in there. More drops every Thursday. The rewards and promos are nonstop, baby. Speaking of a fresh start, Lamar Jackson had some pretty interesting comments. Obviously, it became a story last week that they had removed the ping pong tables. Well, they play on Thursday night. And one of my favorite stories from last week was, the Lamar Jackson saga that I guess if you're running scout team and you're a starter, it's an automatic limited participation designation. And that's where the Ravens screwed up because Lamar wasn't taking all the first team reps. And the moment you don't, as a full-time starter, that you get a limited designation next to your name, and they didn't do it. Ultimately, guys like Florio, who feels like they've made $1 million off football, they wanted to burn to the ground. I'm not one of those people, and I wasn't offended because this didn't happen an hour and a half before the game. Because this is just like the NBA. No, we found out a day before the game that he wasn't going to play. And here's the difference in football and basketball. When a guy doesn't play, you know 2 things. 1, he's injured. Like no one goes, I bet Lamar's not hurt. No, Lamar Jackson's injured. And 2, even if that guy's not around, the team will do everything humanly possible to try to win the game. And that's exactly what happened. Ravens won the game. But Lamar had some interesting comments that I got to say I really respect because let's just hear. This is Lamar Jackson on removing the ping pong tables. I told Kaneko, our head equipment guy, I told him to take all the games, the ping pong tables, and turn the TVs off. If we could have taken out the TVs, they'd have been out too. I appreciate everything Mr. Steve, I think that's Steve Bisciotti, the owner, for putting that all in for us, but we had to focus. I don't want to say people don't take their job seriously. Don't get me wrong. But I didn't feel it was time for that. We got a lot of work to do. And he ended it with this. We're not going to have them the rest of the year. We'll probably have them next year, summertime, OTAs or something. But right now, that's not the focus. I think any coach worth their salt in the history of sports has always said this. My message and discipline, and anyone that, GMs would say this or owners about hiring good coaches, is that their message and their discipline, they set the tone for the entire organization. In football, and ideally in basketball and baseball too. I think we've lost it in baseball, and in basketball, a lot of players have more juice than the coach. But the good teams, the coach sets the tone. And their message can only go so far. It's what people said for decades, the power of the Patriot way. Obviously, Bill ruled with an iron fist, but the standard in which he held Tom to, everyone else had to fall in line. And then Tom preached that way to everyone else. So it was like the synergy between the top to the top player streamlined down to the rest of the group was pretty elite. And I think any coach in the NFL would tell you this. And I remember Dan Campbell a couple weeks ago was like getting emotional about his team. And he was saying, listen, the reason we're so good is because our best players, like the best players on our team, pretty clear what he's talking about. Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, St. Brown, Gibbs and Montgomery, Jared Goff, Laporta, Brian Branch. He's like, are the hardest workers by far. Period. Or as the kids say, full stop. And when you have a player who's the best player on your team, the leader of your team, preaching the message, like at the end of the day, did they lose games because guys were playing ping pong? Of course not. Especially an organization like the Ravens who have been winning for decades. But when Lamar Jackson goes, listen, I need to kind of throw a curveball here. I need to mix it up a little bit. And who knows? Maybe that came through Harbaugh or through Eric DeCosta, through Lamar. But at the end of the day, it gives Lamar Jackson ownership of the team. And I would say the best teams have buy-in from the locker room, a.k.a. their best players in that locker room, because everyone else follows suit. It was like last year when Mike McDaniel was like, yeah, I'm finding guys and they're still showing up late. You just do the math. You're like, well, it's probably not a practice squad guy who can be cut at any moment showing up late to the meeting. It's probably not a guy making $1 million whose salary is not guaranteed showing up late to the meeting. Who would it be? You start looking around. It's like, well, the highest paid guys. Who are those? Jalen Ramsey, Tyreek Hill. It was pretty easy to do the math, right? And it's like you got a locker room problem because your best players, who are always going to be your highest paid players, if they're not listening, you're fucked. And I've said I was out on the Ravens, and I was out on the Ravens. But now I watched this, and part of it was because I'm like, the Steelers are going to cruise to 10 or 11 wins. And watched them last week against the Packers. Watched them 2 weeks ago against the Bengals. Getting ready for them to play the Colts. Like, I have zero faith that they're doing anything. What the hell is the difference between them right now and the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens? I don't think there is any. And they haven't even played the Ravens yet. Now, granted, they've played the Ravens well over the years, so it doesn't guarantee that like the Ravens are going to sweep them or anything. But that thing feels like a house of cards. Meanwhile, Lamar Jackson, who's a guy in his late 20s, who's going to be there his entire prime, taking ownership of this team, you go, listen, this is why this organization consistently wins. Playoff games, and this is why, the Steelers, in fairness, like what's Aaron Rodgers going to do? Like take the TVs out of the locker room? Some guys on the team are like, what the fuck are you doing? So I've known a couple people that have worked for the Ravens over the last 3 or 4 years. And the things I've heard about Lamar Jackson, I'm like, yeah, I get it. I don't think he just, obviously his physical attributes, as a runner and an athlete are pretty special. But like, you don't just dramatically improve as a passer that much without being all in 24/7, 365. That is what the price of admission is to be great. And listen, I'm now, maybe I'm back on the Ravens bandwagon because I'm surely off the Steelers. A wingman never leaves your side. They've got your six, come what may. Folds of Honor proudly provides the same unwavering support for families of American heroes. A Folds of Honor wingman donates $13 a month, which becomes life-changing scholarships for the spouses, sons, and daughters of fallen or disabled U.S. service members and first responders. Join their ranks today as a wingman. More than 3,000 scholarships have been made possible by wingman donors, preserving legacies and opening doors for the next generation. Your $13 monthly gift is profoundly symbolic. 13 represents the number of times a flag is folded before given to grieving families of American heroes. Each fold a symbol of sacrifice, of honor, of remembrance. Let's lock arms around these families and turn the symbol into something more. Education, opportunity, and hope. Become a wingman today at foldsofhonor.org. And last but not least, we've seen a dramatic change in college football. And I think I've listened to a lot of college football content in the last couple of days. I mean, my YouTube algorithm is just feeding me different content from all over America, different, mainly from, Southern podcasts, SEC, everyone's takes, everyone's opinions. I have just been taking it all in. I can't get enough of a coach getting fired, the drama, $50 million. It's everything I love. Football, capitalism, just touchdowns. I mean, everything about it. Dudes leaving in their $200,000 car after their fingerprint doesn't work to get into the building. It's like, inject this shit into my veins. But two things. First and foremost, the sport 10 years ago. So saying, hey, Brian Kelly back in 17, 18, 19 really doesn't parallel that much now in terms of building your roster and the way that you can deal with players. Because back then they were stuck. If they wanted to transfer, they had to sit out a year. And also, if they wanted to transfer, a lot of times academically was a pain in the ass to get different credits to carry over and to be eligible. Clearly now, there is no such thing as the academic calendar. The academic calendar still exists, but in terms of your transcript, when you transfer, doesn't mean a goddamn thing. I fully believe, and I haven't asked anybody in college football, that you could have a 0.0 for multiple years and transfer to any school that wanted you to play football, which I'm all for. Like, where I stand on some of these classrooms and academia in college. I mean, talk about scam zone. But one thing that has changed, and when I first got involved in college football, there was no such thing as a GM. There really weren't personnel people. Ed Manowitz, who is now Jimmy Sexton's right-hand guy, was one of the first of its kind. And he was like essentially the player personnel guy for Nick Saban in like 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, kind of during the launch of the dynasty. He ended up coming to work for the Eagles, how I got to know him, and now has worked with Jimmy Sexton and represents Lane and Sark forever. But those jobs didn't exist. Well, now they not only exist. I was texting with a buddy in the NFL today. I said, how many guys do you know that you saw on the road or have known over the years that went to college football and became GMs? And he started rattling off guys. He's like, this guy went to Florida. This guy went to Nebraska. This guy went to Northwestern. All these Power 4 jobs. I'm like, well, what do they pay? Jim Nagy, who's a longtime scout, ran the Senior Bowl, is now at Oklahoma. He stole guys from the NFL. He's like, well, some of the top Power 4 jobs start at like 800-900 grand. Obviously, Mike Lombardi with Belichick's making 1.5. I said, that's the starting point over the last couple of years, kind of where we're at. What do you think that number is going to be in 10 years as revenue sharing and everything grows? Double? So if the going rate for a job at a top 20, 30 program right now is 750, 800 grand, who's to say that number won't be $1.5 million? Because that's what we pay for coordinators. And if this guy's running your recruiting when you factor in the money, and in some of these programs, and Josh Pate was on my program, I said on my podcast on here, talking about it probably a month plus ago. He's like, a huge shift that's going to take place is these GMs are going to become the power brokers, and they're going to help lead the coaching searches in the future. And I've always hated the word networking. I've always thought it was like kind of hollow. It feels very political. It feels very fake. Like you just get to know someone in a fake way. The older I get, though, it's extremely important professionally to get places through connecting. I like that word more, connecting. But as my wife says, like, your network is your net worth. And in her real estate business, it's very true. And honestly, the reason she's at this luxury real estate brokerage now is because of someone that I followed on Instagram, and he followed me, and he is one of the top producers in the state of Arizona. He's he crushes it. And he was a pretty legendary college athlete, and he's a big football guy. And we've DM'd over the years. And one day I just DM'd him, hey, would you go to lunch with Maria? Just pick her brain. She was like kind of looking to transition, kind of level up. And that's how it all started. And you guys listening that are in sales, that are in any different sort of industry, meeting people, having coffee, having lunch, starting business relationships, not knowing where they're going to lead is the lifeblood for most of us. I mean, hell, you're listening to me through Colin Cowherd. So at least a lot of you. And without that relationship, who knows where I would be at now? I think I'd be doing okay, but I probably wouldn't be here. Like I'm not arrogant or egotistical enough to act like that. So your connections in life change where you go. I mean, look at the sport of football. How many guys get fired who are down and out? They get taken care of by their GM buddies or their coaching buddies. And one piece of advice I would give to any guy on the road, and this could be a successful guy. This could be a guy that a team is, their SEC scout and they're paying him $300,000. Or this could be a guy that just broke in that's making $80,000. And all these guys are working during the season 90-hour weeks. It is a grind. This college football personnel thing is only going to grow. And the money there, based on some of these buyouts, is they approach it with much more of a cavalier attitude than some of these NFL teams. Because I know a lot of people that have worked in scouting for a long time and have won Super Bowls that have to fight for like $10,000 raises. Yet in college football, you see the money getting thrown around. It's wild. And every time that I went into a school, especially a bigger program, obviously when you're dealing with the head coach, you're on your best behavior and you go above and beyond. Like that's, of course. But when you're dealing with these coordinators, these are relationships. Like it wasn't that long ago that Clark Lee or Mike Elko were defensive coordinators, right? Dan Lanning, not that long ago, was the defensive coordinator for Kirby Smart. Once upon a time, Lincoln Riley was Bob Stoops' offensive coordinator. Things change, and they change really fast. Hell, two of the highest paid coaches in the country, Sark and Lane, were offensive coordinators for Nick Saban. Ryan Day, not that long ago, was Urban Meyer's offensive coordinator. So these guys become head coaches, and they need personnel people. And college now, like if I needed a personnel guy, I would definitely be talking to these NFL guys because a huge part of personnel now is the transfer portal, which essentially is like a hybrid of college scouting and free agency. It's what these guys have been trained to do. You go, John, what about the high school recruiting? Well, you have such a big staff, you could hire someone to help you with that initially. And let's face it, most of the way these guys talk is like that is kind of secondary. Not saying that you don't need to know that and that still isn't important, but that is something you can get up to speed on. And eventually, these GMs are going to run point on all this. No different than Les Snead or Howie Roseman, or John Schneider running their personnel meetings. That's inevitable. And that empowers the coach to have more time. But I think a lot of these people, and I know this, when I got to the NFL, I'm so glad to be out of college football. The personnel stuff, one, there aren't even jobs. And two, it's like you just get to a point, you're capped. You have a ceiling. Well, it's changed because it is hard to move up in the NFL. And I know a couple people that obviously I know some GMs, but I also know like number twos. And a lot's out of their control, right? You hope to get interviews. And then even once you get interviews, you never know. They might hire someone else. I saw Adam Peters for years get interviews and then hire other people. It took him a long time. And he'd had Super Bowls with like multiple different organizations. He couldn't have been any more qualified to be a GM. So it's not like coaching. It's way easier to move up in the coaching ranks. In personnel, sometimes you can kind of get capped and you can feel stuck. And the amount of money they're throwing around, Jim Nagy at Oklahoma, I think his 3-year contract is like 800, 900, a million. I might be off on the stagger of that, but it is like a 3-year contract worth $2.5 million. That's 2025 when these positions literally just got started a handful of years ago. I mean, hell, one thing I've started doing for the podcast is like following some of the top GMs on Instagram. And I look, they don't even have that many followers. They're kind of like under the radar. I'm like, start DMing with them. I'm like, they're actually pretty easy to get in contact with. I get a lot of people that ask me for advice. How do I get involved in football? Well, if you're at a college somewhere and you want to work with football, there's never been an easier time ever to get into the personnel world in college. But some of these scouts, and it can be a bitter group, in fairness, totally understand why. You work your ass off. You don't make that much money relative to the coaches. It's not just a 6-month-a-year gig. You're working 10 months a year. You're away from your family all the time. You can become a GM in college. Much easier than you can become a GM in the NFL. And some of these places, they pay 7 figures to live in towns where you could buy a mansion for $1 million. And here's the other thing. You don't think you then become more desirable in the NFL, especially if you know how to work with a coaching staff. You're working with the head coach, I'm sure, on staffing. You are running a budget to buy players who are a lot of these guys. If you're at a good enough program are going to go on to the NFL. You're probably the point liaison for all the GMs, assistant scouting directors that come through your program. It's just a fascinating world that is in the very beginning. It was like anyone that's podcast over the last 5, 10 years, if you've got into the business of podcasting, for example. Like I've been podcasting for almost probably 8.5 years. And it feels like I've been doing this for a long time and like we're pretty far into it. Like this, we're so new into the landscape of this industry, it's not even funny. Because if you think about it, our competition is radio. The more and more I can keep stealing money away from radio as they bleed dry, right? As they get less and less listeners, as younger people no longer consume them, as every generation now has a car that connects to the phone, they're fucked. But we're still another decade, another 2 decades. Like it's not like they're just going away tomorrow. So it takes time. And we'll look back in 30 years. It's like, okay, wiped them dead. But it takes a little time. And it's no different than any new industry. It doesn't happen overnight. And I just think this is an area that a lot in the scouting community should be making much more of an emphasis to get involved at to change their financial landscape.